Good morning, my artsy friends. Welcome to our regularly scheduled Monday morning live. I am so glad that you're able to join me this morning. If you're not able to join us live, welcome, replay crew. I have a little plan for you guys today. We're going to jump into some what may end up being mixed media fun. It just depends on what direction you are going to want to take the project in as you start to work on it. But of course, I'm going to jump into a few preliminaries before we get started. It's just one or two things I wanted to discuss with you guys. And forgive me, I'm taking a cough drop in and out of my mouth. Um, so if it sounds weird, just forgive me for a second. All right, I made some notes. All right, so let's talk about what I have been up to, my friends. This has been a pretty busy week for me. I've done quite a few things, starting off with if you have not caught the pretty easy up close and personal front foreground landscape painting that came out last Wednesday. That video, of course, is up, and you can go check it out whenever you feel ready. It is very simple. It's very easy and straightforward. It is time lapse, but really easy to follow along with. As you guys know, I have been working with the Crayola signature color pencils, preparing for a review. And this Wednesday coming up, we will have a mixed media video coming out that 85 to 90% of the entire composition was done with color pencils. It has a little watercolor for the background, and it has a little gouache for the background as well, and just a little oil pastel on top of the composition. So this will be the video coming out this Wednesday. This is actually a part of the food paint challenge. So if you follow the food paint challenge over on Instagram, you may have seen this imagery done by some other artists already. But there will be the video coming out this Wednesday for our pre-record. Will be me walking you through the steps I took in order to kind of paint this or create this from scratch, taking it from white paper all the way up to what you currently see. I had a lot of fun doing this, so I'm hoping you guys will remember to check out the pre-recorded video that drops this Wednesday at 10 a.m. so that you can kind of follow along with that particular painting. As I said, most of it is done in color pencil, but any of the mediums that we use in that video, from color pencil to watercolor to gouache or even oil pastels, you could use those to do the complete composition with if you so chose. Let's see. Last Monday, if you missed it, I do believe this is what we finished up last Monday. So if you want to rewind and check out last Monday's live, you'll get a chance to check out that composition. Preparing for today's little extravaganza, of course, you guys know I'm starting to put down a little white piece of paper for color testing. I took time last night. I turned on what was I watching? The Challenge All Star season, whatever this current season is, Rivals. I turned it on. I was kind of watching it in the background, and I just kind of went to town on trying to create a little illustration that would be easy to pull off, but would leave you with sort of a sense of satisfaction once you were done. I did want to take it out of the silhouette realm because whenever we do quick little projects, especially for a live that we're trying to get through pretty quickly, I'll tend to do a silhouette. But I want to kind of work on something else. So this one will take a little bit more time, but this is what we're going to kind of be hinting around today. Now, again, you can use your watercolor crayons. You can use water-soluble oil pastels, which may be a video coming up soon. It's been a minute since we've used our water-soluble oil pastels. You can use watercolors. You could use gouache. You can use watercolor pencils. You could even do this in regular oil pastels. So there is many different things you could choose from. And hell, if you are a great enough marker artist, you can actually pull this off in alcohol markers as well. So Plenty of choices, plenty of choices. Let me show you my how I store my watercolor crayons. So I have several different brands here, and some of you may have seen this before, but this is just one of the many easel drawers I have here in the studio. I collect these things. You can find them. I'll tell you where I find mine really. The kids art sets. You can find like these easels in the kids art sets. Some of them be under the most generic of names. I think this one might have been under Creatology, if I'm not mistaken. But you get the 2 to 3 drawer easels with the lift top for the table, for the top of your table, you know. Excuse me. So I'll order those and then I'll remove all the art products and donate the art products and just keep the easels in the drawers because I mean you're paying like 19.99 for a 3 drawer tabletop easel that lifts and gives you the opportunity to create on it. When if you was buying this, say, under like say the Meaning name or some more substantial art name, you would be paying well in the 50, $60 realm for the exact same product. So this is typically how I come about my easels and my drawers. Well, this particular one is dedicated to watercolor crayons, and I have several different brands in here. I have Faber-Castell, which is more of a scholastic school grade watercolor crayon, yet it has great vibrancy and pigmentation to it. Now, I don't think that it is as strong or as saturated, should I say, um, pigment load wise as some of the rest of them we're going to talk about, but they are still a great option. They're readily available. You can find them in pretty much any big box art store, online, your Walmart, your Target if they carry Faber-Castell products, Michaels. Hobby Lobby tends to stick to their own house brands, and if they do have other brands, they are super expensive. So it's there are plenty of options out there, including online options. Okay, so the second brand I have in here that is probably a step up, in my opinion, from the Faber-Castell would actually be the Sargent Art watercolor crayons. Now, this one is a little bit, not a little bit, it's a lot harder than the Faber-Castell brand, but it works more like a fine art product, in my opinion. I do believe that these are white labeled by Mungio. Sargent Art did allow Mungio to make many of its products, and of course, these are labeled as being made in Korea. They have a really great pigment payoff on the harder side, more like a watercolor pencil lead of the watercolor crayon spectrum, but that doesn't change the performance and the quality of the products. And these are actually super affordable. Although I think Sargent Art may have gone out of business. I think I remember reading that somewhere. Um, so yeah, but you might still be able to find their products. I haven't looked in a while, actually. From there, the next step up in quality of what I have in this drawer would probably be the Sunny water soluble pastels. Now, this is a product that I actually ordered from Temu. I'm sure you guys remember it. We went through the testing phase, we went through the review phase. Some of you guys have tried these, and this is an amazing product. Let's make it clear. They are super water soluble. I actually find them to be softer and texture on the paper than even the Caran d'Ache Neo Color 2. So maybe not as water soluble as the Neo Color 2, but definitely a gem of a find in the watercolor crayon world. Now, there is a counterpart to this product on Amazon. They're called iCrayon water soluble pastels. There's been a few, well, not a few. The only artist I've seen review them would be Lindsay the Frugal Crafter. And I even jumped in her comment section and told her that those reminded me so much of the ones I reviewed, which was the Sunny watercolor crayon. So if you're not a person who likes to order from Temu, or if you don't want to support companies like Temu, and you're still ordering from Amazon, then you can look for the iCrayon brand. I do believe they're the same product, just produced for different brand names. And The next step up in here would be the Caran d'Ache Neo Color 2, which most of us are pretty familiar with. I do not have to go into too many details about that one, but it is the actual professional brand of watercolor pencil, watercolor crayon that's in this drawer, and it is considered the echelon of watercolor crayons. I've heard a lot about Lyra as well. I've never tried them, but most artists who have would put them right under Neo Color 2. So, now, on a special note, you'll also see Tim Holtz distress crayons in here. Now, when these were originally released, I was super excited about these. Um, I purchased them; they were not cheap. I just got one pack to start off with, and I have barely used them since I opened them and swatched them out. They are not as water soluble as one would expect them to be. I personally think that they're more on the oil pastel side of things than they are crayon side of things, but that's just my personal opinion. So, and I don't really use them as much, but who knows? They're in here, they may get used one day. So that's what we're gonna do. Let me see. We are 30 minutes in, we're not doing too bad. Uh, so let's go ahead and get started. This is actually a block. Actually, I think this is coming loose. Look there. See? So I'll keep the backing board for crafting projects. But I think there's another piece of paper on here. I think it is. Yep, there it is. So we're going to use this last piece of paper. I guess it's not going to be on a block. It's just going to be we'll just take it off the block and there. Okay. But um, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, in addition, I do have my watercolor crayon palette. This is where when I shave or when I sharpen my watercolor crayons, I sharpen them into these wells of the palette. I spray it down and essentially start to make a gouache palette out of the shavings that I can use in conjunction with the watercolor crayons or the water soluble oil pastels whenever I need to. I also have my Shinhan Professional Gouache palette. As you guys know, this was the first gouache reviewed in our Professional Gouache Showdown. Outside of this, we've also looked at the Turner Designer Professional Gouache, and we will soon be coming up on our third product in the Professional Gouache review. I just had a few things in between them that I still needed to get to. I have a palette here. It's just a little plastic palette that I've taken sandpaper and scrubbed up the inside of the wheels. This turns into a perfect palette for you to kind of swish your watercolor crayons around in order for you to make a wash of color if you need to. So I have all of that, including golden Teclon brushes. I don't know if it'll be completely now if I do it like I did the example last night, then the only thing we'll be using is the watercolor crayons. But we'll see. So I'm going to start off grabbing a pencil and we are going to jump right in. I am going to put a horizon line about a third away from the top of my paper, and it's just going to be a guideline. I'm not going to really be using it. Oh well, I will. Let's see. The more room you put at the top, the more room or the taller your trees can be. I actually made that into thirds instead of fourths. So I'm going to go about a third of the way down, just above what will be halfway down the paper, I guess. A little bit more than a third, just so I can have some room at the top. This one might not be exactly the same. It may be more. We'll see. So I'm going to start off with sketching in. So this would have been my horizon line going through my heels here. So each one of these heels will have to kind of come down over the horizon line into the water. So um, the way I do this is kind of weird. So I know that this one here will be a heel. So I'll just start it. And then I'll just kind of gauge where I want the rest of them. So I want the next one to be maybe here. And I'll take it a little bit further out in the water than the one I have there. And then the next one, maybe here. That's one, two, three. I have four in here. I'll pull this one back. And we're going to take all those up above the horizon line. And as you can see, I just kind of arched them. And what I'm going to do now is start making them meet each other at the top of my paper. Each one running to the other, like so. And then we will just I can take the horizon line out. I'm just making myself some guidelines. Like I say, it's definitely not going to be exactly the same. As you can see, I don't have nearly as much room. It is angled a little bit different, but never paint the same thing twice or the same exact way. Same thing, not the same exact way. I'm gonna put a big boulder, a big rock, kind of off center here. And I'm rounding it off at the bottom because that's how it would be in the water. And everything else from this point, this one and this one would be my bigger rocks. Um, and then everything else will be just kind of smaller. There was a tree here in the original reference photo, um, but I omitted it. And we're gonna put a rock here, but we wanted to break the bottom of that mountain's horizon. So trying to make a path for the eye to follow. And then everything else is just kind of smaller rocks in the water, kind of cluster them. I'm not really making a big deal about the shape of them. We'll work that out as um, we'll work that out as we start to mm, mm, let's I'll put another one there. Didn't really need it. And I'm not really I mean, they're just kind of round rocks sticking up out the water. All right, let's jump into this. So I'm going to start at the top, or should I say on this one, I started at the top with, sit that up there so I can see it. I do believe I was using this blue. Is this turquoise blue? What is this? No, that is sky blue, not that one. I want to say I use a turquoise, yes, turquoise blue. And we're just going to start at the top. And this technique is direct to paper. It's where you're going to use your crayon directly on your paper. I'm applying more pressure at the top, and as I move down my paper, I am lifting my pressure so that there is just a very light coating there. I can make sure the top is good, nice and dark. I might should take this paper down, and then I'm going to also grab cobalt, cobalt blue. If you're using the sunnies, you could use the sapphire blue. Although two of them are named it in my pack. But I'm looking for my cobalt. Here we go. And this is my Caran d'Ache cobalt. And then I'm going to apply that right at the top. Really heavy. Kind of frame it a little bit there. You don't have to, but I'm going to. And then again, coming down, this time, extremely light pressure and only hitting in mids. If we need to add any more color to our sky, we'll actually do it using our palette. I'm going to grab, I'm using a 3/4 dagger. Doesn't matter what you use, just so long it's nylon bristle, because it's going to help push that pigment around. Although these are super soft, so yeah, you don't have to really. They dissolve so immaculately in water that even a synthetic swirl brush will dissolve. And another reason I don't want a brush that holds too much water is because, one, it could possibly wash away your pigment. Two, I don't want to have to wait a long time on it to dry. Like I said, I really probably should have taken this down, but oh well. I'm going to be using a hair dryer so that we can move along real quick here. All right, as I give that time to kind of settle a little bit, I'm grabbing that same turquoise blue and I'm going to work my way through the water here. Um, Keeping my coloring horizontal, going around my rocks and being sure to leave white space. And don't you worry yourself. We will be on a hot mess stage for a second, but it won't be too bad, I promise. And we'll come out real quick. Now, speaking of classes, I was telling you guys about the oil pastel class I'm taking. There are also watercolor crayon classes out there as well, that one could take if they wanted to in order to hone in their skills on using watercolor crayons. I have taken one of those in the past. Um, I've actually been kind of thinking about putting out courses. At one point, I was actually working on a beginner oil pastel and a beginner gouache course, just beginner. But I did end up benching those projects for just a minute. I really want to take time to work on building Patreon. At that point, when I made the decision to table those anyway. Now, if you notice, I'm not putting too many of those cobalt strokes in from this side of my page. I am keeping it heavy along the heel side, so to speak. And I'm just, this would be the darker blue that kind of shadows the waves, right? You definitely experience more of it towards you, the bottom of the page, and towards the horizon line. And as I said, more is less. We'll start with less, and if we need to add more, we always can. I mean, I guess you could take away too, because like I said, you use too much water, you can wash these away. So now eventually I will come back and put some black in this, but it won't be at this particular point in the painting. All right, we can go ahead and start with this one. Now I'm actually going to switch over to a synthetic squirrel brush for this one. Simply because I want a flat brush. This is a number 6 flat. Yeah, let's make this happen. Wait, or do I want to use? No, I want to use this. I definitely want to use this. Okay, so I'm going to start right up under my main mountain. And again, I'm keeping my brush at an angle. So it is completely perpendicular to the paper. The key with water, the key with landmass, when you're using crayons or pencils, is to make sure that everything stays horizontal. And it's the skips and the sparkles and the water. And what I'm doing is first liquefying the main lines, especially the darker ones that I want stay visible. And then with the flat of my brush, I'm just going to go in and wipe across because I want it kind of more wavy, so to speak, in that area around those little rocks. And then it'll get a little bit more wavy as it comes towards us. I'm trying to be sure to liquefy all of the pigment, or at least make sure that water brushes across it all, because, and I don't care if I'm running into some of the rocks either. That's fine. Of course, you want to make sure all the pigment along the edge of your paper. Now, you may not want that many, ripples or waves in your water. So instead of using the tip of your brush to keep horizontal strokes, you want to use the flat belly and just like you would be painting a sky, so to speak. That way you could have washed out some of the harder lines. Mm, okay, I'm going to give that just a second to dry. I will check comments. I'm just trying to make sure I do not, I'm making sure things liquefy without washing out my waves. Okay. if you wanted to, at this point, if you wanted to add, although I'm using Cameron Gouache and there's really no reason with the Neo Color 2s to have to add more saturation into what you're doing. But if you wanted to, this would be the point where you can grab you some gouache and kind of fill in. And again, I'm just making sure all that pigment, because I don't want anything moving later on. All right, I don't know, not half bad. It's getting there. It's a dramatic difference between me achieving a landscape with like watercolor crayons versus regular watercolors or something of that nature. Now I'm going to plug up my hair dryer. If you have a heating tool that will work, whatever you have, whatever suits your fancy. And I'm only doing this because I don't want to have to take up too much of you guys' time. Okay, so where do we go next? Let's start by putting in, let's put some, we're going to block in the color for our little heels, but we're not going to liquefy it just yet. We're not probably not going to liquefy that until after we put in the actual tree line. But so I'm going to start off. This is one of the Sunny water soluble pastels. Uh, what color is this? Let's see. What is this? Oh, yeah, this is it. Um, the color is yellow green. So I'm gonna go in with this yellow green, and I'm just going to scribble it in on all of my mountains. Um, and I'm just starting off with a little base coat, making sure I get all of the white covered going around my, and just scribbling, because we're not going to liquefy that in the normal way you may think. And then I'm going to grab, what color is this? This is emerald green. This is a Neo Color 2. So as you can see, I'm using those Neo Color 2s and those sunnies together. And what I'm going to do is throw that darker green in circular motion across the bottom and up the divide of each mountain or hill, whatever you want to call it, this hilly situation. Then, of course, you would see shadow on the grass here behind the rock, which is the only reason we would have it there. Um, and then I'm going to go back in with that lighter green and actually cover on color on top of that darker green. So sort of using watercolor pencil techniques. That's the thing I like about water soluble products. You can carry technique from one water soluble medium to the next. That's actually how I got into a lot of different water soluble medium. I started out, of course, with watercolors, and then one day I was like, okay, I wonder if the techniques I use from watercolors will apply to watercolor pencils. And they did. And I said, okay, well, now that I know a little bit about watercolors and watercolor pencils, It only seems natural that those techniques would work with inks and crayons and anything water soluble, right? And they do. All right, I'm going to also grab, this is also a sunny water soluble pastel. This is sunny yellow. And I'm going to just tap it in. Now we're putting in oil pastel techniques. We're going to stipple in places. We're not trying to get a complete line. It's going to give maybe the indication that that's a flower. I don't know. We're going to add some more stippling when it's all said and done. But for now, we're going to leave that like that. And we are going to throw in some trees. So I'm going to swoop back over here and pick up this. What was this darker green we were using? Emerald? Yes, emerald green. Now I don't have as much room at the top of this one as I did here. So I'm gonna have to condense a tree or two. Let's see, we'll put one. Now if you want to, this would be a point where you can either sharpen your watercolor crayons because, of course, they are pretty blunt and it's really hard to do detailed work with them, which is why this palette is a great idea because you just throw that crayon in there. That way, you're not wasting it. If you already have some in a palette that you've made from your crayons, you can just go ahead and wet your wheels and then just paint your trees in directly from your crayon palette. If you already have the colors that you want to use in it, you could actually scribble the crayon out into your abraded palette and make you a couple of kind of milky consistency washes of the color that you want to use. You could paint it that way. You could grab your gouache at this point. This would be a great place to interject your gouache and use your gouache to paint your trees in the background. It would be a lot quicker than just using the crayon itself. But the technique I'm going to show you is where we're going to use one color. That's right, just one color to paint our tree line. And that one color is going to give us both the light and the darkness that we need in our trees for them to stand out. So that's why I'm using the crayon. And most of everything that I have done has been the direct to paper technique. So most of this is going to be that way. So I'm going to start about right here, say, and I'll throw up a line for a tree. And I'll come here and throw it on. And I guess it'll kind of get, well, I was going to say they'll get shorter as they go back, but probably not. Because that one I want to be pretty tall. I'm going to try to make it make sense. All right. Don't know if all those will turn into trees or if some of them will get washed out in the wash of it, but that's how we're going to start. Now, I am literally going to draw in my tree just like I would paint it in. Now, there are several ways to do this kind of tree. Um, let me see. You could do this tree. You know where you did that tree? That tree would also work in this scenario. You get it. Um, but I'm going to do the normal blob style evergreens you see me do. If you wanted to do a deciduous tree, you could do that as well. So I'm actually pressing pretty firmly here because I want it to make a dark mark. Because when it's all said and done, that dark mark is going to be the actual shadow color. All right. And then I'll just move from there doing the rest of my trees. And I'm not really worried about the scarcity of being in between, because as you can see, as we start to liquefy, we're going to actually be using that color to fill itself in. So don't worry about that. And I'll do the same thing for the next one. I'm basically just going through drawing trees until they look right to me. And I may need to, make one a little taller just to make it fit in. Um, Trees used to scare me so much. I can't even tell you. I used to hate the thought of trying to attempt a tree because I always felt like I was never going to get it, or they just never seemed right. The issue was I was painting what I used to be drawing or painting what I thought a tree should look like, not understanding that, or at that time, not understanding that trees are nature. No one is like the other. It's very rare that you find twins. So stop worrying about the fact that they weren't uniform. Now, even here, that one seems a little Charlie Brown Christmas tree-ish. You know, it seems a little. I don't know about that one, Thrifty, but you don't you worry yourself. All of them are gonna turn out just fine. It is giving me very much Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown. Like I said, you don't have to draw anything in. You could have done this with um your paintbrush or something. I just wanted to show you how you could use one color to put it all off. And I am pressing hard as I make these strokes. All right, now we're ready to go in and start liquefying. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make me a little puddle, or should I say a little wash of this. So I'm going to scrub that crayon around inside my braided palette. And you see how, because I've sandpapered that, you see how much of that pigment it grabs off of the watercolor crayon, right? Look there, look at that, look at that. And I'm doing it in a palette instead of having to make like a little makeshift palette on paper where you'll end up wasting product. All right, so I'm gonna grab, let's see, I'm gonna go with, I've been using this brush lately. It is a Princeton Velvet Touch number 8 petals brush. And I think it's specifically designed for petals on flowers, which I've used it for. I used this brush to paint, let's see here, if I can grab it without knocking anything over. If you guys remember that we had like a special live, I can't remember where I did it on, but we started working on this particular flower. As you can see, I haven't finished it. I still need to finish the middle, and I need to figure out whether or not I'm putting anything around the actual outside of the flower. But this was painted with this brush, and it is absolutely an amazing specimen of a brush. I'm going to be using it to do the tree. Well, no, I'm not. I need a regular round. So I'm going to grab, I need a smaller round. Okay, this is a, no, that's a synthetic squirrel. This is another Princeton brush. This is an Aqua Elite number 4 round golden Teflon. So I'm going to make a make a wash here. We're going to keep it in just enough water to, I don't know, that's a little bit more than I wanted it to be. So I'm actually going to grab the crayon, stick my wet brush against the tip, and saturate that wash just a little bit more. There are so many different ways to use your products, especially when they're water soluble. Now I'm going to actually hold this in my hand to use it as a palette if I need to. But let's start here, and we're just going to come down that line, and we're going to paint in the normal. I'm just going to paint in the normal way I would do a tree. My normal blob method, as I call it. And as you can see, it's going to pick up those marks, but they're not going to dissolve. They're going to stay there as the shadow in our tree. And most times I don't do that center line that you saw me do it first. I mean, after you get used to your own style of painting trees, you can whip them off at any point. It actually kind of becomes second nature on how to shape them out. And as I was doing this last night, I found it funny that even when I went back in with the brush, I seemed to follow the exact same pattern with the blobs, and it fit right over what I've drawn. I just think that's kind of crazy. And I just ultimately want some tree shapes. We've kind of drawn in the trees, so the work is actually done. We are just literally tapping in what the brain is going to pick up as the needles on the tree. And if I need some more saturation or darkness in there, I can always throw in a little ultramarine, you know, a little blue. Especially since we're using an emerald green, and most times when I see emerald green, it is made up of the pigments or has some pigments in it from phthalo. And like I said, if you feel like it's not enough definition in there, by all means, throw you in some blue on the bottom of your page. Where are we on time? An hour, 18 minutes in. We're doing okay. We can finish this up in the next few. That's why we got the hair dryer. All right. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I guess it wouldn't hurt to throw a little blue. I didn't do that in the other one, but I'm gonna grab this ultramarine and I'm going to just grab a little color directly out with my brush. I'm just gonna throw that little hints of that in towards the bottom. And I know you're thinking, wait a minute, we didn't use ultramarine. No, we didn't. We used cobalt, but we're going to use ultramarine, so don't worry. I just want it to look like a mess of trees back there somewhere. Somewhere in the distance is some more trees. Very simple, very straightforward type thing. Absolutely. All right, let's move this out the way so we can make sure that this angled in front of the camera. And we're going to move on to the top part of our little hill here. I'm thinking I'm going to switch over. I want something that I know will cause more texture as I use it. So I'm actually going to grab a number 1 cat's tongue. It's got shorter bristles that are compact together more. I'm gonna make sure I pull all the water out of it, and then we're gonna tap in order to activate the mountain. Technique we use on watercolor pencils all the time. I'm just gonna tap. Now what this does is it dissolves the pigment, but it creates a foliage-like texture on what you're doing. And every single time I rinse my brush or I grab more water, I take my fingers and pinch that water out of my brush before I come over to do the tapping motion. And it's going to take a little work, but it blends really well this way. And you keep plenty of texture. And I like to tap on the bottom where I have that darker green and push upwards with it towards that yellow and that lighter green. All right, let's move on to the next one here. I did pinch that water out of my brush, and now I'm just going in and I'm tapping with a kind of push upward type motion. All right, and then I'll get to the darker green. Excuse me. And I'm being sure to tap with that upward motion so that it pushes up towards that yellow. And the fact that you have some white space left in there leaves breathing room in the pigment. I think it just helps it out. We'll finish activating the mountains and then we'll check the comment section again. See if I can catch up on your comments. See if anybody had any questions I need to jump to right quick. And we're not done with these. We're just activating the first layer. We're going to come back and put more crayon on top for this section, definitely. Because I do feel like we lost a little bit too much of the yellow in that one. So we'll have to do a little touch up. You could also throw in a little black in those trees back there if you wanted to. Kind of emphasize the bark or to add in a little more color. I'm never opposed to black when it comes to watercolor crayons or watercolor pencils. I'm actually not opposed to black when it comes to watercolors, if the truth be told. I actually use black paint on a regular basis. I know other people are, but I don't have no issues with the color. Well, I've heard some people say it's dead. Well, there's several ways to keep it from being that way, you know. Oh, well, that's gonna be rock now. Should have been water. But anywho, you can add whatever colors you've been using in the rest of your painting into the black, or add black into it until you get it dark. There's so many ways to do it. All right. Okay. I am going to check the comment section. Then we will block in our rocks and go block in more color on our heels in just a second. So let's start to block in our rocks. I'm going to start off with, you can do this however you want. Now, if you want to make really colorful rocks, you can. Like we did, well, there's a huge shift in the watercolor. That's another, that's one of the caveats I had with that hippie crafter watercolor set. But because you can see it's a huge shift. But can't really tell, but those were colorful rocks. They were. So you don't have to stick to traditional earth colors, but for this one, we are. I'm starting off with, what is this? A yellow ochre? No, it's just called ochre. It's a Karen Dosh, Karen yellowy. It's in the yellow ochre family, and I'm gonna throw a little of that into these rocks, or probably make up some rocks as I go. As I go. Um, and I am just not taking too much seriousness about my life with this part of this, just blocking in color. A little here, a little there. I'm going to kind of define the rocks as we go. No, just whatever I see in my mind's eyes, I'm adding a color. Ooh, maybe we'll end up putting some little reeds there. Because I didn't think about it on the other one. Throw in maybe some cattails or some little flowers or some type. They kind of grow up on the opposite side of that rock. It'll be cute. All right, and then I'm going to grab, let's put a little red in there. Now, this is Red Ochre by Sunny. So we'll throw a little bit of that in there. See if we can get that in, a little bit of it in each one, especially those smaller ones. Probably not. And for the bigger one, we're just going to kind of scribble it in. Because again, we're going to be using the tapping technique. And this is not how I would approach rocks normally. As you guys know, I normally approach rocks with my credit card scraper. But I tried something different with this one. Um, Hopefully it works out the way it did last night. I'm gonna go in with an even darker brown here. This is just called brown. It's Karen Dosh. And I'm kind of going across the bottom. It's really hard to get it in those smaller ones now. I'm just taking it, since it's just like a regular brown, like no red or anything, and just a regular old brown. I'm gonna throw that across the bottom. And it is so amazing that those sunny, that these are softer than Cameron Dodge. I think that is so crazy. Now, not as, I don't think they're as pigmented or that they dissolve as well. But I still think there's something to note. And then I'm gonna grab a black. This is what is this? This is a Sergeant Art black. They're all pretty saturated. And then I'm just gonna kind of envision where I want like the cracks in the rocks to be, the shadow side of the rock, where it would be, the fact that the rock is wet and touching water, so it will be darker. And you'll even start to see the form take place as you work. Um, and for this one, I kind of see a shadow like in there somewhere. And this is and the sun is coming this way, so all of the rocks on the back are pretty much shadowed in some shape, form, or fashion. Um, Now this is the Sergeant Art watercolor crayon, and it is harder than either the Neo Color 2 or the wait a minute, Sergeant Art. This is Sergeant Art. It's harder than the Neo Color 2 or the Sunny slash eye crayon. Um, but it is just as dissolvable, and it has more of the feel of a watercolor pencil. So you can actually sketch with these a little better, which is why I chose this particular black one. But like I said, it's got just as much going on with the pigment. So I'm just divide these rocks up. That's all. All right. Now I'm gonna jump back up here and starting with that original green, I'm just going to stipple. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this up, grabbing that darker green, add some darker spots in. Then we'll go in yellow, and I'm going to press super hard with that yellow, super hard. It's going to almost give you impression of maybe flowers or something on that hill that is yellow. Okay. You can throw a little brown up there if you want. I didn't in the other one. Um, I'm gonna put it in across the bottom. Um, or maybe you would see land. Like so, all right, not bad, not bad. Let's get to dissolving some stuff so we can wrap this on up. Um, I am going to grab that same number one cat tongue I was using, and I'm just going to go in and just gently tap. I'm not trying to, I'm just trying to make sure that the pigment doesn't lift off the paper if touched. And I'm not really trying to blend anything. I want to keep the detail. I'm going to grab my ultramarine and just ever so slightly, we won't even really be able to tell, but it will make a difference. All right, now we're going to, let's get these rocks dissolved. And maybe I'll go in and put some more shadow in the tree line just to break it up some more. Um, Again, pinching and tapping. And some of these I have to form a shape for because it wasn't really a rock. I just threw it there. Okay. And you'll see they'll start to have wholeness to them right away, especially once the darker side. And then I will take that color and that rock and drag it out horizontally to start forming the shadow for it if it has enough pigment there. Thank you, Eleanor. We're gonna tap, 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 tap. Look at the texture. Look at the texture. Tap, tap. I'm tapping over my brown before my black. Over my brown before I do the black part. Mixing that ochre, mixing that reddish brown. Now I'm gonna go in and tap over the black and start to bring that out shadow wise. The back part of my rock here. Let it float up the back part of that rock, flow down into the curve on the back. Look at that, look at that. And then you will just come across the bottom where you had that black at, because keep in mind, we are going to be making shadow. And you can literally start to drag that color out. Rocks are going to be the wettest and the darkest where they actually touch water. I mean, you can always grab a little color off your crayon or what have you in order to do some more reshaping if you need to. I really don't care. They're rocks. They come out how they come out. Rocks are weird. Rocks are weird. All right. Only thing I really wanted to do that I didn't do here on this one was add in white or try to lift our highlights on those rocks so they look more rockish. Um, we're gonna attempt to do that today. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know if the crayons are gonna lift, but we'll see. I can't remember. I've never really tried to lift crayons. I always just add bleed proof to everything. But for the sake of someone who might not have bleed proof, we're gonna uh, all right, I'm gonna tap the black sections of this, kind of spread that out a little bit across the back. And if you don't want to use black, you don't have to. You could just use your dark browns You could have made you another neutral from another color combination, purple, yellow, green, red. You could have used a burnt sienna and a ultramarine. You could have used a blue and an orange of any shading. So it's completely on you what you decided to do. Now, once these dry, I can go back in and scribble a little watercolor crayon on top of it to give it some more texture. Or you can even top this off with oil pastels, you know? Like, if you want to play around with oil pastels, you can do that with this, which is probably what we're going to do tonight in Creation Station. So if you just bring your pastels. That's all I'm going to say. Bring your pastels, friends. Okay, we're almost done here liquefying these. It does take a second because I'm not actually trying to blend anything more so than mix it and create texture at the same time. A really toothy paper works good for this. I wouldn't. What we've done with this technique basically is use the paper to create a lot of texture. This paper is actually medium grained, so it is a little bit. It has a little bit more texture on the surface than, say, like the fine grain papers we use on a more regular basis. I tend not to use rough paper much, although I do like it, especially for landscape. Like a rough paper would really be ideal for the techniques that we're doing with the watercolor crayons because this tapping technique that I'm using to create this texture with would be served greatly by rough textured watercolor paper. Um, So, that's something you may want to consider. Like when it comes to your water soluble pastels and medium, water soluble pastels specifically, even your watercolor crayons, your medium to rough grain papers are probably going to pull more pigment off the pencil and probably just give you a better overall painting experience. I've also found it to be true with things like oil pastels. The smoother pastel papers, the smoother mixed media papers, don't get me wrong, they work wonderfully, but the rougher grain, the more sand grain papers work even better for both colored pencils and oil pastels. So just something, something to give some consideration to if you've never tried those papers and you're having issues. Uh, Maybe you give something different a try. It might work out for you. Hey. Eleanor, I just happened to glance over at the chat real quick, just so I'll see how many comments have came up since I had my head down working, and I happened to pay attention to the last comment up there, and Eleanor said, "It looks like she can wade in the water." That is hilarious. Oh wow, what type of phone do you have? I'm curious. I record shoot and do my lives from a 16 Pro Max. Um, and the camera is absolutely amazing. Amazing, 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 amazing for content creation. It takes some beautiful pictures, but more so than that, it shoots amazing video and it gives me so many different modes to work with. Um, I think I want a little bit more color in there, so I'm just gonna grab that black and pick the color up directly from the crayon. Just kind of tap it in there a little bit. I mean, you really wouldn't see the bottom of this rock. But I'm still gonna brush just a little dark across it just to get it rock shape. Just to get a rock shape. All right, let's see. How we looking? I think we looking okay. We need to put some highlights on the rocks, and this is already dry. I really don't want to do too much messing with it. Um, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. It looks fine. I'm not going to dissolve any more of what I do want to do is kind of dissolve the brown where we put down to emulate our little land here. Okay. And I think the only other thing I want to work on, I'm going to cut it kind of short. Only other thing I want to work on is shadows and darks. All right, let's do that. Let's wrap a little of that brown around it up. Let's give a little more definition to that. Um, okay, let's. I do not think we're going to be able to lift highlights off of those rocks. I'm gonna be honest. I probably should have planned, but you want your highlights to look natural, which is why I like to kind of lift them back after I've painted the whole thing. But I don't know. I do not know how this is going to work. Now I have black. This is just black. This black, the Sergeant Art black. I already have a little photo here from last night where I was doing a practice painting. I'm gonna switch over to that number 4 round Princeton brush, and you can mix other colors in if you want. I'm not gonna worry about mixing other colors in because I use the black directly into the rocks. And what I'm gonna do is paint in some shadows. Um, you can make them as dark or as light as you want. Keep in mind this is your project. You don't owe anybody any explanation. So if you want your shadows to be dark, make them dark. If you want your shadows to be light, make them lighter. If you don't want shadows at all, well, hey, it's completely on you too. Might not ground your rocks to your water, but still your choice. Still your choice completely. Now, As you notice, I have a little bit extra water in this well next to it. That's because I am keeping this thin. This, although this is a Sergeant Art black, it is pretty saturated and it is strong. Do not sleep on Sergeant Art watercolor crayons. Do not sleep. I need to go to the grocery store. I really don't feel like going and fighting. Um, I really don't feel like fighting anybody in the grocery store to get anything. Um, and I don't know. For as much as I don't want to go in there, I still have yet to take advantage of ordering online and just picking it up, which probably makes sense for somebody who don't want to fight in the grocery store, right? All right. I think I want to add a little bit more to these back here just to definitely emphasize underneath the rock. And then I need to just, I don't know, I'm just going to kind of put a few shadows here and there in the water. Maybe this is reflecting, maybe that is, I don't know. Um, Maybe there's a shadow coming off a tree on the hill. Maybe there's a shadow coming off of something on the opposite side. Who knows? But whatever it is, it's causing some shadows in our little creaky water here. Creaky water. All right, there we go. We got to figure out how we're going to do highlights, and then we're probably going to call that done. Let's grab, oh yeah, here they come. We'll grab our black crayon. Absolutely, here they come. And get it real black and saturated. Let's see. It's one right here. Yep, it's one right there. And then there is one that you can see maybe a little bit closer. So we'll make them bigger. And since he's that close, we'll make sure you see his tail. All right. Um, let's see. Let me grab a little bit more of that black crayon. We cannot just have two. We put a little one back there in the back. I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's planting on some trees. Same thing over there. All right. They're all kind of hovering around back there. Who knows what's going on? I do hate I kind of lined them out that way though. It kind of seemed to be in a line. I didn't intend to do that, but it is what it is. All right, let's figure out what we can do about lifting. I'm gonna grab. Okay, so this is a mental scrubber by Royal and Langnickel. It's one of the white nylon ones. Uh, this one is not necessarily recommended for watercolor use, but it's the hardest brush I have at the moment sitting by me. So I'm going to see. Um, and I do not have a rag. That is crazy. I do not have a rag for lifting, so I'm going to use. I use this fabric, which only means I'm gonna have to watercolor dye the fabric before I use it. Whatever. All right, let's see. Yeah, it's not doing a lot of lifting, I don't think. Even with this harder, I mean, seems to be lightening just a little bit, but yeah, I would end up tearing up paper trying to lift that color out. So we're going to switch gears. Oh, yes, we are. And we are going to pull out the bleed proof. That's right. You heard me. I'm going to grab a little round synthetic brush. This is a golden, not a golden Teflon. It's a, what you call this thing? Squirrel, synthetic squirrel brush. All right. And we're going to, I guess, we're going, here, let's put it in the water first. So we'll start tying it in right away. We'll put water lines right under the rock, really thin. This is where the water will be touching the bottom of the rock and causing. Hold on, the truth of the matter is, those water lines probably would be on the opposite side due to the way the water is flowing, but whatever. I mean, I'm gonna let you know if I'm making a mistake. I didn't say I was gonna change it. And I'm throwing it um, right under the bank of the. Yeah, all right. And then I'm just gonna hit these back here with a little cute U. I'm gonna hit them with a little cute U on top. We're not finna play all day trying to talk about highlights on these rocks. We're gonna highlight them where it seems like they might be getting hit. I really would have loved for it to be a more natural highlight by me being able to lift it out, but it's not. So it is what it is. This is no stress creating today. No stress. No stress, just fun. No stress, just fun. There we go. That works. Hopefully, that was a cute little something that you painted along too. Don't forget, you can always drop your work. If you're a part of Paints, Pencils, and Pastels, you should post it over there. If you follow me on Instagram, you can um, DM it to me and I will put it in the Thrifty Apprentice. I'll put it in the Patreon community for all to see because the artist posts over there are open to all, even free members. All right. I think I want to put some little splashes, like it might be white flowers in the background. I didn't do that in the other one, but we're adding, we're building. I'm just gonna take this little brush and see here. Oh, those little splashes not big enough or anything. Let's switch back over to the number. Oop, I dropped that brush. Haha. Hope I don't need it again. We're switching back over to this number. What is this? 6, 4, 6, whatever. don't know. There, some little bitty white flowers on it, kind of everywhere. All right, I'm gonna sign this, and then we will check the comment section as we wrap up. Uh, see, got a pen here. Have a pen. I have a pen. I got a dollar. I got a dollar. I got a dollar. Hey, 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 hey. All right. So here we have a finished illustration, and all I used was watercolor pencils. I mean, watercolor crayons again. I did not use gouache. You can. I consider watercolor crayons stick gouache. So I am always talking about them sort of interchangeably. But you very well could have used just your regular gouache palette if you wanted to. But I think it's fun to use our stick media. There we go. Let's get a closer look at what we pulled off today. See the texture in it, the texture in the mountains and texture in the rocks. Very solid looking, very solid looking. And let's just take a look at it in comparison to the example that I did. So there's the example that I did last night preparing for today's class. I actually like the one I painted today better. I really, really think I like the one I did with you guys better. Um, it seems like it's a different time of day, doesn't it? This one seems like it's earlier in the day than this one. This one seems like it's later in the evening. And maybe the gouache white highlights on top of the rocks and the sprinkled kind of white flowers in the background. Maybe that made all the difference. Excuse me. I think I don't know, there's definitely a difference between the two, though. But there you go. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it. Let's just kind of run through what we did today, and then we're going to wrap this on up. So, today we created what was advertised as mixed media, but it really turned out to just be water soluble oil pastels. Or water soluble crayons, watercolor crayons, if that's what you would like to call them. As you guys know, I use a mixture of the Caran d'Ache Neo Color 2, the Sunny Water Soluble Pastel, the Sergeant Art Watercolor Crayons. I did not use any of the favorite pastel crayons, but they're in here as well in order to create this cute little landscape, which I did a design for last night, and we used this illustration in order to replicate it today. I'll be honest, I do like the one that we worked out today much better. Hopefully, the edits for this video will be up by tomorrow evening, maybe tomorrow night, at the latest Wednesday when the pre-recorded release come out. Then the edited version of the live with all of the cutouts and the chit chat taken out will be available if you want to just kind of, in replay, watch the creation without all of the talking in the background. And I did create on the 100% cotton acid free A5 140-pound medium grain paper. This is, you can order it off Lightwish's website. I know you can also find it on Amazon, but I think it's sold under the Lightwish distribution brand. However, it's made by a Chinese company. But it is a absolute wonderful, wonderful, wonderful 100% cotton watercolor paper. So yeah, and it's cheap. That pad of 20, that block has 20 pages in it. I think it's like 14 books last time I checked. So yeah, absolutely amazing product. Uh, I'm glad you made it, Taylor. I really am. So quick tips for watercolor crayons, just reiterating, um, as we say goodbye or as we wrap up. Use your watercolor crayon shavings. When you shave, when you sharpen, as you can see here. I used a knife to kind of whittle a point on my watercolor crayon so that I could do a little bit more detailed work with it. When I sharpen them or whittle them down, I do that in a palette. I immediately spray those shavings with a little water and then use a palette knife to press them down, basically making a paint block or a paint cake. And then you can paint directly from your shavings as like gouache in combination with using your stick direct to paper. Second technique tip trick is to take a plastic palette, use a butter knife or sandpaper or something that's really abrasive and scratch up the wells of that palette. Scratch up the insides so that you can take your crayon and do things like put it directly down into the palette. That abrasion is going to grab the pigment off of your crayon or your watercolor pencil or your water soluble oil pastel and allow you to make washes and use the product just like a paint. So that is tip number two. Tip number three and final tip of today's little straightforward one would be that you can use different brands with other brands. You do not have to limit yourself in any shape, form, or fashion to just using one brand. If you have many different art products, explore how they work together. You will be amazed at the things you discover. Um, in here, I have several different brands that range in price and quality of watercolor crayons. We've got the professional of the professional, the Caran d'Ache Neo Color 2s. Then a step down from that, in my opinion, although they are softer than the Neo Color 2s, but not nearly as dissolvable, would be the Sunny watercolor crayons. A step down from that would be the Sergeant Art watercolor crayons, which are super dissolvable, but not nearly as soft or creamy as the Sunny or the Caran d'Ache. Harder, like a watercolor pencil lead versus a crayon, but still super dissolvable. And then, of course, there is the bottom of the ones that I have here, being the Faber Castell Kids Scholastic watercolor crayons that actually work really well. But what makes them all work better is that I'm not looking at brand as I use them. As I grab them to use them to create, I'm looking at color and whatever I need because they all work well together. Now, some of them might not be as saturated as others, but that's where experimenting comes in. You learn how to use your products together. So hopefully some of this information resonated with you all today. If you've been here live, my hope is that you've already sprinkled a little love. You've already given the video a thumbs up. You've already chosen to share if you were going to. And if not, then please don't forget, sprinkle a little love. Share if you choose to. If you're catching the video in replay, then by all means, you saw, heard, picked up on something, just enjoyed hanging out or enjoyed painting along today, then sprinkle a love, give the video a thumbs up. If you are returning to this channel and you haven't subscribed yet, friends, now's your time. Go ahead, hit that subscription button, that notification bell, so you will not miss when I throw up new things. For instance, Friday is not a normal release date anymore, but we will have a video coming out this Friday, as I announced at the beginning, just so that we can get caught up on some things. And this Friday, we will be having the review video for the Crayola Signature color pencils, which is different from their regular um, color pencils. So this is why you need to subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you'll be notified when these extra videos and the extra things we do come out. This video description hasn't been updated yet, but it will be updated along with the edits for the replay. I will throw links in this video description. So if you come back in about a day, you will find links for the Caran d'Ache, you'll find links for the Sunny, you'll find links for the Sergeant Art, you'll find links for the Faber-Castell, you'll find links for the paper we used today. I will even put links up for a couple of the different brushes, just in case you decide you want to source any of that And if you need me to, I'll even throw up a link where you can grab yourself a palette and scratch it up and use it for your crayons and your pastels and your watercolor pencils. Friends, it has been my absolute pleasure, my absolute pleasure, hanging out with you guys today. Don't forget, we meet here every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So if you don't have anything to do, you want to hang out and experience and experiment together, then come on over because who knows what we're creating. We're just having fun. Go out, enjoy the rest of your week. Don't forget, we have a video release this Wednesday and this Friday, guys. And as far as my Patreon Creation Station members are concerned, I will see you tonight at 8 p.m. Okay, I really need to make groceries, so I'm gonna figure this out. um, but I We'll see you tonight, guys, at 8 p.m. Grab your pastels, whether you grab your watercolor crayons, whether you grab your water soluble oil pastels, whether you grab your chalk pastels, whether you grab your oil pastels. It doesn't matter because what we do tonight, you'll be able to create using any of those mediums. I'm going to be using oil pastels. We're going to be talking a little bit more in depth about those, but so that's what's going on over in the creation station tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye, 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 my friends. Love the scratch palette tips. Great. I'm glad you did. I hope you guys love any tips that you picked up on. And until next time, just keep creating. Bye.